Something has shifted inside NASCAR garages, and it's impossible to ignore. Multiple drivers are now openly pushing for a complete rethinking of the intermediate package currently used at tracks like Charlotte Motor Speedway, but Kansas Speedway, but and Las Vegas Motor Speedway, but this isn't quiet frustration whispered between team members anymore. This is a full-blown movement demanding fundamental change to how races are run at some of the sport's most prominent venues. The core complaint centers on one undeniable fact. These cars have become too dependent on aerodynamics and not dependent enough on the actual driver behind the wheel. The current intermediate package relies heavily on high downforce, combined with limited horsepower. On paper, NASCAR designed this formula to create tight racing with cars running side by side, bunched together at high speeds. Sometimes it delivers exactly that visual spectacle. But drivers are increasingly vocal about the trade-off nobody can ignore anymore. Clean air has become king. If you're running out front, your car remains stable and planted. You can run your preferred line, manage your pace, and essentially control the entire race. But the moment you drop into traffic, everything changes dramatically. That dirty air load coming off the cars ahead completely disrupts the aerodynamic balance. Suddenly, you're not racing the track or the other drivers. You're fighting invisible air currents. The front end loses grip, the car gets tight, and you're stuck searching for stability instead of hunting for speed. This is where the real frustration boils over. Drivers are telling anyone who will listen that the car operates in a very narrow window. You're not experimenting with different racing lines. You're not working the throttle the way drivers used to for decades. You're just trying to keep the car stable in turbulent air while hoping track position works in your favor. Think about what that actually means for a sport built on driver skill. NASCAR racing was founded on drivers managing tire wear, controlling the throttle input key, and finding speed through different lines over long runs. Now drivers are saying there's less throttle modulation required than ever before. Tire wear doesn't matter as much as it once did, and passing depends more on airflow than driver skill or racecraft. That represents a massive fundamental shift in what separates the best drivers from the rest of the field. To be completely fair, NASCAR didn't stumble into this situation by accident. There was genuine purpose behind developing this package. The sanctioning body wanted tighter racing packs that looked more competitive on television. They wanted cars to stay closer together at high speeds, creating more drama and uncertainty. And they specifically wanted to control speeds for safety, especially at fast 1.5-mile tracks, where closing speeds can become dangerous. From a safety and consistency standpoint, the logic makes perfect sense. But from a pure racing standpoint, drivers increasingly feel the balance has tipped too far. Instead of rewarding the best driver, the current system can reward whoever controls on-track position first, regardless of whether they're actually the fastest car or most skilled wheelman on that particular day. That fundamental reality is not sitting well inside the garage, where competition and proving yourself against the best should matter most. We've now reached a critical point where conversations have moved beyond small tweaks and minor adjustments. Drivers are openly discussing eliminating the intermediate package entirely. They're pushing for increased horsepower across more tracks. They want to see reduced aerodynamic dependence that would bring control back to the driver's hands, feet, and instincts. The stated goal couldn't be simpler or more direct. Make the cars harder to drive again. NASCAR has shown some signs they're listening to these concerns. They've been adjusting horsepower at certain tracks and over recent seasons. They've been reclassifying others away from the traditional intermediate setup, acknowledging that not all mile-and-a-half tracks race the same way. But the core intermediate tracks are still using this aerodynamic dependent system. That's precisely why this debate isn't fading away into the background noise of the season. NASCAR finds itself trying to balance three competing priorities: safety, entertainment value, and competitive fairness. Drivers are asking for something they see as simpler and more pure. They want a car that genuinely challenges them, that separates talent levels, that rewards bravery and skill over air currents and track position luck. As fans watching from the grandstands and at home, you can absolutely feel this tension building. Yes, close racing matters. Seeing cars run 3 wide into corners creates excitement, but fans also want to see drivers earn their victories. We want the entire strategy to matter. The way it did in NASCAR's golden eras, we want mistakes to carry consequences. We want to watch drivers searching for grip in different parts of the track and taking calculated risks that might pay off or might cost them positions. That's what made this sport special for generations. That's what created legends and memorable rivalries. So the unavoidable question becomes, what happens next in this escalating standoff? Does NASCAR continue making incremental changes, adjusting horsepower here and tweaking spoiler angles there? Or do they take a genuinely bigger step and reset the intermediate package completely from the ground up? Because if they actually eliminate this aerodynamic-focused package, we could be looking at a completely different style of racing, Tom, in the very near future. That wouldn't just affect a few races, that could define the next era of NASCAR competition for the next decade, when you actually watch races at places like Charlotte Motor Speedway or on the Kansas Speedway. With these concerns in mind, you can literally see how much the race depends on track position. Instead of pure driving ability, the leader gets clean air and just controls everything lap after lap. The guys running behind are stuck fighting their cars instead of actually racing each other. That's not what made NASCAR into America's most popular motorsport. The biggest problem isn't even necessarily the lack of passing, though that matters. It's the lack of visible struggle. Listen, it used to feel like drivers were constantly managing something critical. Tires degrading, throttle control through corners, finding different lines as track conditions changed, maintaining balance over a grueling long run. Now, too often it feels like once the car gets dialed into the right aerodynamic window, everything becomes predictable and processional. And while safety absolutely matters and nobody wants to see dangerous racing, if the price of that safety is taking genuine control away from the driver, then something fundamental needs to change. Increasing horsepower and that reducing downforce would instantly bring back that feeling of drivers having to work for every position, every lap, every advantage. You'd see more mistakes when drivers push beyond the limit. You'd see more variation in how different drivers attack the same corner. You'd see more moments where raw talent actually makes a measurable difference in the outcome. NASCAR probably won't flip the switch overnight and completely overhaul everything between one season and the next. They'll likely keep adjusting things incrementally, testing and measuring results. But if this pressure from drivers keeps growing louder, and if fans keep expressing the same fundamental concerns, eventually the sanctioning body will have to make a bigger, bolder move. Because at the end of the day, this sport reaches its absolute peak when the driver is the biggest variable on the track. And right now, a significant number of drivers feel like that simply isn't the case anymore at intermediate tracks that make up a substantial portion of the schedule. This moment represents more than just another rules debate or off-season controversy that fades away. This is about NASCAR's identity going forward. If NASCAR leans into these driver demands and implements real changes, we could see a genuine return to races where drivers are constantly working the wheel, managing tires with precision, searching for different racing lines that others haven't found, and actually creating passes through skill instead of waiting for clean air or pit strategy. If they don't make substantial changes, this conversation will only get louder inside garages, on radio shows, and across social media. Either way, something significant is coming, and fans are right in the middle of this pivotal moment. Moments like this don't come around often in NASCAR's long history. This is precisely how eras change in this sport, not overnight with dramatic announcements, but through sustained pressure, through voices inside the garage getting progressively louder, and through fans demanding something that feels authentic and real again. You can already sense that this is building toward a genuine decision point that will shape the sport's direction. Whether that watershed moment happens this season or further down the road, the trajectory is being shaped right now through these very debates. The next move NASCAR makes regarding the intermediate package isn't just another technical rule tweak buried in the competition bulletin. It could fundamentally redefine how we experience racing every single weekend at some of the most important tracks on the entire schedule.